Welcome, listeners, to Cyber GPT Pulse podcast, the podcast where we will further dive into nitty gritty of container security, kind of second edition of Container Chronicles. I'm your host, Amiruddin.
And I'm your co-host Mohammed Ilyas. Today, as Aamir mentioned, we are tackling a crucial topic: container security. Specifically, we will be discussing why there's no OAP's top 10 list for container security, similar to the one for web applications, and why we need one.
Yep, exactly. So let's brainstorm what can be those top 10 list for container security might look like. So I think in my mind, the first point which comes around is insecure container images for obvious reasons. So pulling images from public repositories without verifying their integrity is a huge risk.
Definitely. Using trusted sources and verifying image signatures is crucial for regularly scanning those images for vulnerabilities. And also, there should be also the standard set of practices where they try to get the signatures and also to avoid any vulnerabilities or pitfalls.
Yep, that's true. So another critical point which could be is just misconfiguration or weaker configurations. So these configuration can lead into exposing sensitive data and enabling unauthorized access. So as can be through Docker Compose or just having those API keys directly given into the environment of Docker Compose. So that can be one instance.
Right. Agreed, Amir. There are also tools like Kubernetes, where the security context can help enforce secure configurations. It's essential to use configuration management tools to maintain consistency and security throughout.
Yep, that's true. And so, how about unrestricted network traffic? So, a proper network segmentation and policies are necessary for preventing unauthorized access and lateral movement within the networks. And usually, setting those network policies kind of a difficult scenario. So, sometimes developers missed out it.
Right. Implementing network policies in Kubernetes can help limit communication between different containers, and also it enforces the principle of least privilege.
Yep, that's true. So, and yeah, we can also think about these improper storage of the secret storage or secret management. So that's always a problem in any production as well as for containers. That's also true. Securing secrets in plain text or even within the images is very bad practice, as we can understand. But still it do happen from because whenever responding those dockers we might use some templates, and those templates are usually having those hard coded secrets. So with lesser experience, um, you developer might do these mistakes.
I wouldn't call it a problem. I would call it as a serious problem. Using tools like HashiCorp Vault or Kubernetes secrets can efficiently help manage and protect sensitive and confidential information. So it's crucial to encrypt secrets both at rest and at transit.
Yep, yeah, that's even crucial to have both secret stored in both ways, rest and transit. Um, but we have to also have some consideration about the lack of resource limit. So usually these these containers are used in a limited environment, maybe in IoT, maybe in agriculture field or automobiles. So sometimes not properly focusing on setting proper CPU and memory limits can lead to resource exhaustion and make the system more vulnerable to DDoS attack or denial of service attack.
Exactly, like defining resources limits, which ensures that no single container can hog resources and disrupt services. So it's all about balancing the performance and security hand in hand, no matter what, how many containers or resources you are having across the network.
Yep, that's the correct word. Balancing the performance and security, as with the limitation of resources in various application, it kind of very difficult to do to focus on security. So specifically, that need to be also indulged with having those standardization and policy in place, and also monitoring them so that we kind of that brings on a thought of having insufficient login and monitoring without proper logging and monitoring. Uh, Although it's usually thank God that we have to detect incident and respond to that incident, but it's these login and monitoring also helps into identifying any production issues which might bring on from various misconfiguration, maybe being due to lack of resource limitation. So it's kind of helps to enforce security also. And also, yeah, insufficient login is kind of very handy in both ways.
Well, it's vital, like tools like Prometheus for metrics and ELK stack for logging can provide the visibility uh, provide the visibility needed where so like wherever. So to identify and mitigate security incidents quickly, we need to have these metrics in place, which can log, as you mentioned, detecting and monitoring incidents is nearly impossible. But then, if you have this sort of tools integrated with your in your orchestration remedies, so that might help a long way.
Yep, that's true. And so another point, kind of important too, could be untrusted third-party content with so many third-party tools and library in use. It's not easy to overlook into security implication of them.
Right. Let's say, for example, as mentioned, a rigorous vetting of third-party content is necessary. Like using tools like Clade for vulnerability scanning in container and implementing this, the stringent policies around the third-party softwares can help mitigate this risk, I think so.
Yeah, and some might argue that we already have Docker scanning and Docker trust is there, but why to have a third party, or why to have additional vulnerability scanning? But yeah, that's one of the trade-off which need to be identified based on the application, whether the application is required additional scanning, because Docker scanning has some limitations which doesn't goes for multi-layer scanning as well as. So we have to pivot for various multi-layered scanning, maybe Trivi, maybe Clear. So it's kind of again a trade-off which is being done here. So we should also consider having those outdated components, which everything need to be kept very dated, and it's kind of a huge challenge. Specifically with so many versions coming around from everything.
Right. Adding to it, how about like having continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines, which can help facilitate automate your automation techniques and make the things most up to date, and which also ensure components are set to the current are set current, and they also take care of regular vulnerability assessments, which are crucial too in the from the security standpoint. So having CI/CD pipelines which can automate these things, make it more compatible, and as well as a risk-free environment whenever there are any vulnerabilities across the network.
Yep, yeah. Those container supported vulnerabilities assessment is very crucial there. So lastly, I think of is inadequate isolation mechanism and lack of runtime security. Ensuring proper isolation and runtime security is very critical for protecting container, because it's kind of runtime, as everything is
Yeah,
runtime.
uh, yeah, correct. So for to enhance the runtime security, there are a couple of tools, third-party tools we can leverage. like App Armor or SE Linux or SecComp, which can enhance the runtime security, and create a strong namespace. And C group isolation can also reduce the attack surfaces.
Yep, and with those specification in namespace, as I want to uh, hit out the previous issue of network policy, kind of makes life more difficult. Technically, specifically having those strong namespace sometimes leads to a developer having those network issues, and that's why there should be a specific logging and monitoring of those images going into production, so that enforcement of security control can be done at every step. So
Like
having focused on all the top 10 list for container security here, which is very invaluable, I would help team to prioritize their effort and address the most critical risk first.
Well, before we prioritize the efforts and the most critical risk. So, how about if we start by assessing our current setup against these points and identify the areas of improvement. So let's whether developing a container specific top 10 would be a great step towards stronger security practices, but and also you need to have more strong the setup start points where you can have and identify the areas where it needs to be improved, and then you can get deeper to secure the container images.
Yep, that's true. So let's dive deeper in each of these points. So let's start with insecure container images. Have you seen any specific image in any specific incident which might lead to any major issue here?
Um, oh yeah. If I go down the memory lane, I recall a case where a company pulled a popular image from a public repository without verifying it. So then it turns out to be the image had been tampered with and included a cryptocurrency miner. So it went unnoticed for weeks, and then which ultimately caused significant resource drain and financial loss.
That's a perfect example, and it's why it's very crucial to have trusted source and verifying image signatures. We need to implement policies to only use images from verified sources and continuously scan our images for vulnerabilities.
Well, absolutely. Another point you mentioned was weak configuration. So I remember a scenario where a development team deployed their application without a proper network policies. So, but then they ended up exposing their sensitive data because their containers could communicate freely without any restrictions in and out of the system. So this weak configuration can also not only hamper the scenario of the development team, the developed applications, but also the network policies. So I would say we need to be more more proactive while we have the sensitive when we are dealing with the sensitive data.
Yeah, misconfiguration are very easy to overlook, and so that's why to enforce security context, need to have regular audit. Using ISC tools sometimes helps to maintain consistency and catching these misconfiguration early.
Well, I completely agree with unrestricted network traffic. So we had an issue where one compromised containers was able to move laterally across the network and then across other sensitive services. So by implementing Kubernetes network policies helped everyone to restrict traffic and his least privilege access.
Network segmentation is also a key. We need to be defining, having enforcing network policies to isolate container and limit communication only to what is necessary. So, what about improper stored secret? Any incident there?
Oh, definitely. There is in one instance, a team stored database credentials in a plain text, so with their container images. So when those images were shared across environments, the credentials were exposed, so leading to unauthorized database access.
Yeah. So definitely. So that's um, then we can have another look on having how to how to securely store a secret, which is non-negotiable. Using tools like Kubernetes secret and walls, as you already discussed, is really important, as well as secret management. Specifically, rotating secrets regularly, and policy of rotation is key for that.
Well, moving on to lack of resource limits, I recall a case where a poorly configured container consume excessive CPU and memory usage. So the causing other critical services to degrade. So setting appropriate resources limits is essential to prevent such issues. And coming back to the point, as I just brought it up, rotating the secrets, which can mitigate the which can mitigate the risk exposure. So by coming to the HashiCorp, Vault doesn't have an ability to rotate the secrets. So, but then there is another competitor, CyberArk, but it does have an ability to rotate the secrets, like, based on the policies you created, like 30 days, 7 days, or a 90-day rotation policy.
Yep, that's a good point. So with the resource limit does help ensuring fair resource allocation and protecting against denial of service attack. And so, from that perspective, we have to enforce a resource quota for these containers.
Well, now about inspection, logging, and monitoring. In one of the breaches, the lack of proper logging meant the intrusion went undetected for an extended period of time. So we had no idea what happened until it was too late.
Yeah, that's another issue. So with logging and monitoring are very critical, and for detecting incident, and tools like with right custom metrics in Prometheus or ELK, these logging provide necessary visibility.
Right, absolutely. For untested third-party content, like everyone must use a third-party library that had a known vulnerability. So it wasn't until a security review that discovered the risk needs to be posed. So make sure, we need to make sure we have a third-party library which can track the known vulnerabilities.
Yep, and vetting these third party components are really critical. And so again, for continuous vulnerability scanning, it's actually helping into having these strict policies for users.
Well, coming back to what you brought it up, like just brought it up, outdated components. So regarding outdated components, I remember a scenario where an outdated container component had a critical vulnerability. So because we weren't updating regularly, so we remained exposed for too long, and that caught a critical vulnerability.
Yep, updated components are crucial. Using continuous integration and right configuration for the deployment pipeline with version control can automate updates and run the latest images for secure version, which
Right.
have secure tagging as well. So yeah.
Right. Finally, having an inadequate isolation mechanism and lack of runtime security, like once we had an issue where a container exploit affected, so the host system due to weak isolation mechanism as well.
Yep. So that's yeah. I think with isolation, it's fundamental, and those tools, as we have already discussed, provide specific isolation for reduce attack surface.
Right. So this deep dive really highlights how critical each of these points. So developing a specific top 10 list of container security based on these use cases would be invaluable.
Yeah, that's completely true. So I think we have discussed all the critical, crucial points in container security, and from this, I think users will be getting some idea what can be the top 10 container security, as well as we will have a draft for that in the show notes for interested viewers, and they can read out and have comments on that. And specifically from that, we will love to have more input from the interested parties. And yeah, that looks solid from my point of view. So we after the documentation, we can further move on for making it better guide for improved container security practice. I know OWASP Kubernetes top 10 security is already there, but from the generalized point of view, there should be another one which gives a more holistic view for container security.
Well, agreed. Let's also plan to review the periodically and update it based on new threats and experiences. It's all about continuous improvement and continuous deployment from the DevOps perspective, I would say. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a great deep dive, and container does these various container security, including orchestration and from version control, the whole container life cycle does offer a lot to cover, and we will today conclude the episode of containers security for Cyber GPT Pulse podcast today, but we will bring on more episode on the same from the same topics with covering each of the container life cycle. So I hope our listeners found this insightful, and thanks for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe for more insight into world of cybersecurity and containers, and we will further deep dive in containers and security. And in if you have any question or topics you would like to us to discuss, feel free to reach out.
all right. All right, folks, stay safe, stay secure, and protect your digital world as always. So we'll catch you up in the next episode.